welcome to Picture This number three. And my name is David Ebel, and below me on my picture, or next to me on yours, would be Joel Cordes, who is my cohort in crime and partner in this adventure. We are going to be meeting with you in various formats in the near future, and as we go and grow in lots of different ways. The neat thing about this adventure is that it's not limited by miles and miles of anything. It's only limited by our imaginations. And so I wanted to introduce you to Joel so that you get to know him. This is Joel Cordes. Joel, say something.
Good evening, David. It's a pleasure to be here. As you can see, I've gone all out to put a backdrop here for everybody. We're
Yes.
under construction here. I'm actually broadcasting from my wife's home office, which is pretty barren because we're in a remodel stage. So, I pulled out all the stops for you, David.
I love the fact that you even added a plant on top of your shelf. So,
Yeah, I
but
had to reposition myself. It was making a crown over my head, and I figured there's only one person that has a crown, and it's sure not me.
I resemble that remark. Our goal in the next few weeks is to begin to bring in some. We'll be doing shorter 15 to 20-minute weeks every week. Do a live stream, and then we're going to be building toward specials once a month where we interview somebody on their victories, their failures. How did they get where they are? What did it take to get there? What's good in their life, and what was the price. And so we wanted to start the adventure by doing it close to home. So today I've invited Joel to not only be my co-host, but he's also going to be the guy that I interview, so that we get used to all these different ways things fit together. And we're excited about this. We're glad that you're here to be a part of it. Um, so, Joel, I'm going to ask a couple of common questions, and you just give us your honest opinion. So, when guys get together, one of the first things they usually end up saying is, "What do you do? What do you do?"
Interesting question, David. I could sum that up in one word because it's pretty typical of my entire life, and that word is serve. I've spent my professional career first in public safety. I was disabled as a first responder in the line of duty. Became a executive coach and motivational speaker. I got recruited into corporate America to help with some major projects. Then went into the ministry, serving my community, and most recently have joined up with a law enforcement organization, a nonprofit that raises money. I'm here in Arizona for the families of officers that have been killed in line of duty and for officers that have been injured in line of duty. So that's the thing I do, David, is serve.
Well, and that's a great thing. Not everybody can say that. Many people want to do that, but that doesn't mean they've got there yet. And I'm glad that you have figured that out. But I have a funny feeling that you didn't just discover this overnight.
No, it was a long journey in all of my 67 years, and I was a late bloomer, so it was an uphill climb.
Well, a lot of guys try their skills. They try what they've done well. They go back and when things get hard, they go back to what they used to do. Sometimes that even includes they've been sober a long time and it gets so overwhelming they go back to drinking or go back to getting high. So it's a lot of people try different ways, and I'm glad to say that to see that you've done something successful with your life and you've learned how to be a servant. And I know that a lot of people in our culture, when they hear servant, they think of that you've settled, that you're not a whole anything. But I don't know, a policeman, a fireman, a pastor. Those are servant positions, but they're positions with a lot of responsibility. I've served in ministry for 45 years, and 35 of those in chaplaincy as well as pastoring. And it's never been without challenge. It's never been without hard work. And it's in a lot, and many times initially people don't appreciate what you're doing because it makes them uncomfortable.
Especially in today's time, David. And you had experience also working in the disaster arena as well in your past. So you've had a taste of the streets, so to speak, in more than one ways. And yeah, it's a rough road out there right now for people that really truly want to serve.
Hmm. So, what being realistic? What do you do well? It doesn't mean that's different than what you do.
I'm very good at messing things up, and I think that probably speaks for a lot of people. We tend to mess things up, and doing a good job of messing them up has been a path in my life. It's also been being able to fix the things that I've messed up, which I think is probably the greater of the accomplishments, is
Hmm.
to recognize when you've gone the wrong direction and be able to correct that. I look at I lived two lives, David. I lived a life prior to becoming a believer and after becoming a believer, and I've talked to a lot of people that were born and raised in the church and do not have a feel of what it's like to have started out on the wrong side. And then when you talk to somebody that has been on the wrong side, it's every one of them has an amazing story. I used to believe I could do anything and everything, and I was good at it. I could build things, I could fix things, I could manufacture things, I could build a house, I could fix a car. I thought I was just a jack of all trades, a MacGyver of the world, until I realized that I couldn't do any of those things. It wasn't me that was doing those things. So the thing I did well was getting on the right path.
I can understand that. I was 20 years old, and I had never felt like I succeeded at anything. The only thing I felt like I could do well was fail, and everything I would try I end up in crash and burn. And when I went to church, I'd given up everything. I had attempted suicide multiple times because there was nothing to live for. I had lost hope, and I went to church because the girl was cute, and I knew I was going to be checking out of this world quickly. So I thought maybe she's got something I don't, or if nothing else, like maybe she'll go out to dinner with me after church. I don't know. I couldn't do any worse. So I went with her. She brought me to church, and interestingly enough, I didn't go for the reason she went for. When we got there, I learned about Jesus, and when I learned about Jesus, it was real clear. She was the right one to bring me to church, but she was not the right one to bring me the rest of the way. And I just gave my life to the Lord and discovered that there was a whole new life, a decent life, a life with a feeling of hope. And so I'm drawn to people who have figured that out already,
And,
because I understand.
and David, I'm fascinated by not only your story, but other people's stories who have come from the wrong path
Hmm.
and their transition to the right path. Those testimonials are amazing stories. Every one I've ever heard was just an amazing story. And I think that's one of the things that I look for in people when I'm conversing with people and realize that they're a believer and a follower, is to find out what their story is. And
Hmm.
that's usually the question I ask them. I say, so what's your story?
Hmm.
And listening to the journey that they went through, um, it's it's made by God. I mean, there's no other explanation. And believe me, I've had several near death experiences, and so I
Uh-huh.
know how close I came, and I know what it means to have your faith in the Lord.
Exactly. So what do you love to do?
Well, I thought I hinted to that earlier with
Well,
my careers.
I'm just opening the door a little wider.
It's always been to help others. And I think by going into public safety,
Mm-hmm.
I did half my career as a firefighter paramedic and half in law enforcement, where I was injured in the line of duty and disabled. And the uniqueness of those two professions, as you know, being in a life of ministry, you're
Mm-hmm.
providing a service where, one, there's no expectation of anything in return, and two, there typically is nothing that can be given in return for what you give. And what you do is purely out of your love and generosity for
Mm-hmm.
mankind. And that was even before I was a believer, just wanting to contribute and recognize people that were in pain and suffering, that there may be something that I can do to relieve their pain and suffering. There may be something I can do to relieve them from being hurt or damaged, whether I was on the fire department or the police department. And I think those really hold true to people that do serve.
I spent a good period of time as a chaplain for fire and police and for hospitals and for in disasters. And one thing I've noticed is that there are many people who are doing these important things, but they're doing them hoping that that's enough. They're doing the thing that's going to make them okay. And by doing all the good things, they feel like they bought their way into heaven, if you will. You know, they're trying to be good. They're doing everything they can, but they haven't figured out what a personal relationship with Jesus is. And that's something that is easy to, once you get it, it's like, why was this so hard? But initially, it seems foreign. I mean, I had no idea there was a personal relationship until the night that I went to church and it became real. Before that point, it was Jesus was a gold guy on a turquoise cross hanging on my sister's wall. That was the depth of my relationship with him, and it's amazing when I finally came to realize that he was real. That it was a relationship I could develop. It would be a friendship at the deepest level. That changed my everything.
And David, from what you're saying here, going back to the giving, the selfless, and I use two words quite frequently: selfish and selfless.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I go back years using therapy dogs
Mm-hmm.
and visiting every place from hospitals to care facilities to nursing homes to schools.
To disasters.
And I'll share a quick story with you.
Go right ahead.
On one occasion, I started to realize that my service dog, when I went into a long-term care facility, that he had a behavior that he would put his head or his chin either on the edge of the bed, or if the person's arm or hand was at the edge of the bed, he would rest it on their arm and hand. And I knew at that point I would never see that person again. And every time I would go to this facility, his behavior changed, his demeanor
Mm-hmm.
changed, his approach changed.
Mm-hmm.
And when he put his head on the bed or on their body, I knew that was a goodbye. And that was one of the hardest things for me with doing the therapy work. And I came very close to stopping.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to do some soul searching and came to the conclusion that what I was doing was not for me.
Exactly.
It was for them.
Mm-hmm.
And what that dog was doing for those people might be the last smile and the last memory that they would have.
Yeah,
I couldn't take that away from them, David.
I agree. My dog is named Bucky, and I got him at 8 months. And by 9 months, he was demonstrating that he could sense pain across a football field, or someone suffering in a room full of 5,000 people, and he would take me to them. And initially, I tried to correct him because I thought he was doing something wrong. I didn't get it that he knew something I didn't. But once he clearly, every time that someone was suffering, he would take me to them, and then I would use some of the training that I had in helping people when they suffer. Um, it became obvious. So, not being the smartest guy, I called for help and got a trainer who trains service dogs for a living to fix me so I didn't mess up him. I didn't know how to correct for that. I didn't know that I was actually hindering him. As soon as I learned a few things from the trainer and we applied them, Bucky got in bed with people who were dying. He was 10 months old and he was in a bed with somebody and nobody wanted to be near the guy because the guy, as he got sicker, became real crabby. Nobody wanted to be near him. And Bucky didn't seem to even sense that. And we've had several of those where Bucky was the one. And I know in your case, you've got, your dog did the same kind of thing. He demonstrated with his life the value of the person that was being touched.
Do you think, David, that what was going on in those situations, that there was some divine intervention?
Without question. I don't. We've even Bucky and I and you and your dog were divine in connection. We met doing good and became friends doing good, and then over a period of time, we ended up helping each other. And I was able to do what I do well by encouraging you to get in even deeper with the things of God.
Well, you knew a lot sooner than I did where that divine intervention was coming in, just in your and my relationship.
Mm-hmm. I only had a 40-year head start. Just a 40-year head start. But I knew that you were searching, even if you didn't run around announcing you were searching. And so I just treated you with the love and respect you deserved, and God worked out the details. Now, getting back to you and the dog that was your service dog, you want to tell the guys what his name was?
Well, his name was Harley, and he was a Belgian Malinois, and I ride a Harley. And because of my disabilities, I eventually had to add a sidecar, and he would ride with me. And he wore little goggles and rode in the sidecar. And when I was in the LA area, he'd been in parades and on the news and in newspapers, and he was quite the celebrity.
And Bucky is 110 pounds of golden retriever with the most tender spirit of any animal I've ever seen. So Bucky and Harley used to enjoy each other tremendously. So and Bucky is now in his senior days, and he's still having a good time, but he's in slow-mo now. He's not doing anything real fast. But when something comes up, he will still take me to someone suffering.
He's catching up with you and me, David.
Yeah, but he's got more hair than both of us. But now, getting back to the interview kind of thing, what about personal goals or challenges as you look forward? What's next?
Well, I had a lot of challenges, mostly because I was on the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
And you had mentioned earlier about someone that had led you to the Lord, and I was challenged in a relationship, similar situation that you had described, and the relationship ended, and I went to see a brand new pastor at the church I was going to, and he had been there 1 week and was introduced, and the second week he did his first sermon, and then the next day I'm in his office. And we don't have enough time on your show, but I went through a lengthy history of the ups and downs in my life, of thinking that I had the world by the tail, and all of a sudden I was thrown in the sand over and over again. And shared with him three near-death experiences starting at the age of 15 up until the one that led to the demise of my career in the law enforcement. And after I was done sharing everything and explaining to him that when I had these near-death experiences, the first thing I did is called out to God and asked if he was real to save me. And he did. And I turned around and walked away 3 times. So fast forward many decades later, I'm sitting in the pastor's office sharing this story with him. And he asked me one question. He said, "So what can I do for you?" And my response was, "I'm looking for God." And he was a minister that was from Alabama, had the Alabama draw, had just spent 20 years in China teaching English, which is the cover for being able to do ministry and discipling in China. And with his Alabama Southern drawl, laughed, and he said, "Don't you realize he's been pursuing you all this time?"
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would be a challenge to accept the Lord. But I accepted him right there in his office, and a week later I was baptized.
Mm-hmm. And then you began to live instead of survive.
Absolutely. And looking forward to continuing to do his work
Mm-hmm.
in wherever he leads me. He led me to since I ride a motorcycle, he led me to a international ministry that went out and went amongst the bikers of the world. And I served in that ministry and had another calling back to my roots, back in law enforcement, and got involved with this other organization. So I think when you say challenges can be good challenges and bad challenges, but the critical thing I think that most people get hung up on is that challenges requires changes. And oftentimes it's difficult for us to change. And I know biblically, you're a scholar, that you know a lot about change and how the scripture addresses that. And as I learned those things, and I'm still learning,
Mm-hmm.
change can be a very positive thing, again, if you're on the right path.
Oh, and there's no scripture that says trust Jesus and your life will be perfect. What it does say is that when you trust Jesus, Jesus warns people that if they didn't love on me, they're not going to love on you. If they don't receive me, don't look for them to receive you. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the reality of what was going. Jesus warned them, and he certainly didn't over exaggerate. When you put your trust in someone higher than your peers, and you say you're going to do something different that your peers haven't understood for good, many times you initially you get ousted, you get pushed away, you get ignored. That's what happened to me when I gave my life to Jesus. I went back to all the places I used to hang around, and I was walked to the car physically and told not to come back because if I did, they would kill me on the spot. And that's kind of helped sort out what I was going to do with my life in ministry. The places where I had failed repetitively fired me because I wasn't going to be a troublemaker. And so I looked at the future and kind of let the path to the future lead me as I became incredibly addicted to loving Jesus and following his advice and his direction. And it's worked for me and gave me strength. And I know that you still have struggles, physical struggles, stuff that you don't look. It's both of us have medical issues, and neither one of us look like there's something really wrong with us. When people meet us, people don't say, "Well, man, with all the suffering you have, wow, I could understand." And reality is that most of the people I know who suffer aren't people who've been hit in a car accident or have lived through some major disease. Life has just caused them to be so stuck that they can't see hope beyond the tomorrow. they're stuck. And you're fortunate, and I think I'm fortunate that I can see that with God, in spite of my physical challenges, I'm okay. What do you think?
I think he gives us hope, and he gives us a mission. He gives us a direction. He gives us a purpose. And I think for those listening, sometimes we struggle as to trying to figure out what is our purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we see it daily.
Mm-hmm.
Drug abuse, suicides. To me, it's two forks. One is a loss of purpose, and the other is a loss of hope. And I think that both of those can be achieved through faith.
I agree. So now that you've gotten to this chapter in your life, the forks in the road, um, what do you think is your greatest victory now?
My greatest victory, I think, was realizing that all the things that I thought that I was, I'm not. That everything that I do, everything I'm capable of doing, everything that I've achieved in my life has been part of God's plan. And I think that's jumping that gap
Mm-hmm.
has probably been my greatest achievement. Accepting the Lord first in my life, my wife second, and everything third. And again, backtracking as we talked about earlier when I was discussing people that I've known that grew up in the church. They
Mm-hmm.
from their earliest memories was in church and don't know anything different than the church. And they've already been given their purpose and they've already been given their direction.
Mm-hmm.
People that have not been on that path, I think that's when we look at our society, it's bifurcated. And I think that there's people that are half of our people are on the wrong path and the other half are on the right path. And I think that the accomplishment is to see, and for my goal is to help people to look for the lost and to try to help them bridge that gap and make that accomplishment of moving from disbelief, lack of hope, lack of empathy, lack of sympathy, lack of confidence in themselves,
Mm-hmm.
to make that gap, to realize that all of that, and I mean all of it, you and I can both attest to this from our injuries and the surgeries that we've had and the current medical conditions and the prognosis and things. Despite all of that, accomplishing that merge from one lane to the other, it is everything for us.
Absolutely. So now you've worked through all these different pieces of the puzzle, and you discovered for what is really Joel 2.0, and that is that God is first, and if you are dependent on Him, then you don't need a second. You just live your life for Him, and as a result, He does His best through you. And when you do mess up, you can go back to Him and ask forgiveness. And when you confess your sin, He forgives our sin, and He cleanses all the unright things we do. So we're not stuck when we mess up. We just messed up, like a little kid with his parent. A kid makes a mistake, they don't shoot him, they help him get past that and teach him a better way. And that's God's way of demonstrating love to us, is to be there with us and let us learn and help us grow to be more than we ever dreamed of being. And so,
Dave,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, David, on that point,
Mm-hmm.
part of the problems that I see in today's society is, including myself, because again, we're all sinners, we're all broken, is we forget to give everything to God.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a perfect example. When I got married, I lived in a town north of Tucson, Arizona. My wife was from Phoenix. She's an electrical engineer. She worked for a company. They had a big contract with a major semiconductor firm in the Phoenix area. Her company allowed her to work from home. She moved to the house that I had, beautiful home, beautiful view, gated community, a lot of amenities. And then her company got bought, and the new company realized that they didn't have anybody in the Phoenix area close by to their client, not really understanding the business. So she had to come back up to Phoenix, and we weren't sure what we were going to do. She was looking at staying at an extended stay until we figured things out. And she went to lunch with one of her girlfriends, and her girlfriend says, "You know what?" She goes, "I own a duplex, and the people just moved out. I was going to sell it. Why don't you guys just rent it for as long as you need until you find a place?" Well, we figured we'd sell the house down by Tucson. We'd buy a house up in the Phoenix area. Everything would be fine. We figured we'd be in this little 2-bedroom duplex with 3 cats and a dog, and most of our belongings in boxes stacked up against the walls for just a couple of months, over a year and a half, as the market just took off. And of course, we had our, as everybody does, no matter whether it's a house or whatever it is in our lives, we all have our shopping list, whether it's for a partner, whether it's for groceries, whether it's for hobby items, crafts, whatever it is, we all have our list. And we couldn't find what we were looking for on our list. And we looked and we looked and we looked, and the prices were going up and up and up. Finally, my wife and I said, "You know what? Let's just pray for a house." And we gave up our list. It was days later that out of nowhere, this house came on the market. Well, actually, it wasn't even on the market. We saw that it was going to be coming on the market. Our realtor got a hold of the owner's realtor. God intervened, made it happen with a meeting, met with the other realtor, looked at the house on a Saturday, and by Sunday we had a signed contract. House never even went on the market. David, not only did it have the things that were on our list, it had things that we dreamed about, that we thought we would never, ever have in a home. And that's an example of which we all have a problem as being broken people in this world, of giving everything to him. And I'm the first one to say on a daily basis, there's things that I don't give him. And I struggle. And when I give them to him, and it doesn't mean that I just sit back in my easy chair and say, well, God's got it, it's going to fall from the sky. That's not the God that we have. He's
not Santa Claus.
Yeah, he's not a babysitter either, right?
Exactly.
So, but the concept of giving what burdens you to him, he rewards us for that.
Absolutely.
And I have a perfect example. Both my wife and I are perfect examples with this house of how giving something up, giving everything up, and turning it over to him, we were rewarded in ways that we never dreamed, David.
And now both of you are even more grateful to the Lord for when you trusted him, how he stepped up and did things you couldn't even dream of.
Absolutely. And that's the importance too. And of course, you can speak on this as the Bible says, to be properly yoked. And my wife is a believer and follower, and so am I. And that was on our grocery list, so to speak, of what we were looking for in a person to spend the rest of our lives with.
So, having said all that, if you had 5 minutes left in your interview, what would you want people to hear? The floor is yours. What do people listening? What do they need? What do they need to hear from you?
You know what they need, David? The same thing that you need and I need. They need hope. And that hope has to be that no matter what happens around us, no matter what your beliefs are, no matter what political party you belong to have hope. God didn't create this world for us to fight with one another. He didn't create this world for us to dislike one another, to drive stakes between us, but we do because we're broken. And you have to have hope and spiritual hope. And if I were to ever give any kind of a closing message to someone is have hope, don't give up hope. And with that, I'll turn it to you to comment spiritually, I think, on
Okay.
I'm certain you've got something to say when it comes to hope.
Well, just a little. Uh, the whole purpose of my life from the time I found out what hope is has been to get to know Jesus, not because of a building, not because of a dynamic, not because of somebody else was part of it, but my relationship with Jesus is mine. He is real to me. As a result of that, I have the privilege of sharing that real Jesus with other people, and they discover it's real for them as well. And that's what I daily live for. Even if I'm only doing helpful things, but I'm not preaching constantly. Uh, whether I'm using words or I'm just using my life and my heart, Jesus is real through me. And my goal is that with through this program, the purpose for this program from the beginning, in calling it Picture This, is well, I'm a photographer, and when you go to that, let's see here. This is one of the pictures I took most recently. It's an almond orchard during the blossoming time. The bees come out and fertilize the flowers, and then later in the year we have these delicious almonds that everybody loves so much. But in the meantime, look at the beauty that's there. Before I had hope in Jesus, I couldn't create because I was broken enough. I couldn't see beyond the broken. And here, all these years later, I discovered that with cameras, I am able to see in my head, believe in my heart, and then act it out in my life, and it works. God inspires what I'm doing, and you end up with pretty things like this. And so that's what in retirement, that's what I'm doing is I'm taking beautiful pictures of landmarks and different places and landscape type things, and they're things that bring joy to others as well. And matter of
You
fact,
know what what I see, David, and I hope going forward in your videos and your live streams that you display more of your artwork, and this has not been rehearsed, and just the word hope. When I look at as I was looking at, and I'm assuming those are some of your pieces behind you,
mm-hmm.
and I know that I have some of your pieces that I've gotten from you over the years. But so I'm assuming those are yours behind you.
Yes, they all
As
are.
we've had this conversation, again, it's amazing because I'm feeling the Lord leading. That word hope, your pictures are beautiful, but there's something in every picture. Maybe that might be your theme with using your artwork in your program under the basis of there's hope. I mean, look at this beautiful picture with these blossoms. Though winter has made those limbs barren, with hope, look at what he's produced. And I just, as I was looking over your shoulder at your pictures as we were talking this evening, the word hope just came into my head, and I certainly didn't come from my head. But as I was looking at your pictures, I thought every one of those, there's a topic of hope that's tied with your work. I can just feel it in the pieces that I have from you now, and just looking at this one here and the ones behind you. I mean, what an amazing connection that, whether you've realized it or not, I mean, you're hearing it from me. Your pictures depict hope in so many different ways. I hope you incorporate those into your program.
Well, it's our program, as you helped me put them together. But the picture directly behind me, the sailboat, isn't just a sailboat. That's in Haiti, one of the most impoverished countries in the world. And yet there are those who live there that have a little bit, and they take that little bit and they'll put together a sailboat and they'll harvest fish for their little town, so that people have a future. They have a life. So to them, that boat is hope. It is their future. That is their promise of good things. I could each of the stories, each picture I have has a story. I tend to be a consummate storyteller by nature, and so the pictures tell the stories that I see and feel and hear in my life. And we'll be bringing different ones in. As a matter
I
of fact,
look forward.
we're going to be introducing a giveaway where certain weeks we're going to be doing a drawing, and we'll be giving away some of my work uh, to some fortunate person who comes and is part of our program. Starting next week, when you check in, it's going to ask you to sign in, and because that's how we can tell who to give the gift to. So we're going to introduce the sign in, but that's to be able to get ready to give away some of these pictures, not for what they're worth, but what you're worth to us as people who we're getting to know and befriend. We want you to share in some of that hope and some of that beauty with us.
Well, you see people that are out there. You want an example of selfless? There's one right there for you, David. Just that's amazing. What a great gift to give people. I look forward to future videos and programs with you.
Well, we're on our way, and folks, thank you for your patience as we figure out how to use the equipment. We're learning by doing, but we're not disappointed. We're just laughing at ourselves for our humanity, and keep on going. So next week we'll be back on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Hopefully the equipment will play nice with us, so we'll be right on time. But we'll have another opportunity to tell stories and meet people. And I've got 3 people already who are in the wings wanting to be interviewed because they've got a story to tell, and they are looking for an opportunity to share their story.
I'm
So
looking forward to it, David.
it's in our near future.
All right.
So we
Well,
thank you all for coming and being a part of us. We hope that if you like this, that you'll actually share it. It's on our YouTube channel, and you're able to copyright from that and share that to whomever you'd like, and invite them to come back and be with us next Tuesday at 6. That's Pacific time.
God bless and good night to everybody.
God bless. Thank you for coming, and we'll talk to you. Do well. Give your life to the one who can make the best of it, and be amazed at what happens next. Good night, everybody.